videos playing. Going to And if you need to say anything, let me know. And Anthony, I'm going to make you a moderator now. I failed to do that last time. That was terrible.
You're saying always make a second moderator just in case you drop a call.
Right?
If you do, the room will close.
Oh my goodness. Hi, Chihuahua. At 6:03, I'm going to start pinging people in. Okay. Do you hear a lot of feedback from me?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, how my house sound?
You sound good. Can you let us know if you hear something different? I can hear you move. Can you hear me move?
No, I don't hear anything.
Okay.
I'm gonna try to be as still as possible.
No, no worries. It doesn't matter. That's normal.
I got the Apple headphones in, so I'm trying to make sure the mic doesn't touch my beard.
Oh yeah, that's tricky for you guys, for you men. Ooh, 2 people are watching online.
Awesome.
So exciting. On Facebook. That one. No background?
That sounded like a truck. That was about it.
Oh, Kenny, he was saying no background. Okay, I get it.
Oh.
Because remember I said, oh, Kenny, how does the background sound?
Yeah.
Makes sense. All right. Kenny, I'm glad you're out there, actually. It helps me at least to feel like I'm talking to somebody. All right, about 20 seconds now.
Okay.
All right. Welcome. This is the Loving You series, where we focus on building our toolbox towards self-love. And we have this show every week at 6 p.m. on Saturday evenings. And I'm just so grateful that everyone is here and tuned in, because we have a really amazing conversation with Mr. Anthony Chiles, and we're going to be talking about empathy. But before we get into the conversation, I just want to uh, thank everyone for tuning in and also let you know that throughout the segment, there's going to be opportunities for you to ask questions or share comments. So feel free, if you're on Clubhouse, to raise your hand with your comments or your questions. And if you are listening in on Facebook or on YouTube, then feel free to put your comments in the comment bar, the chat section, and we'll make sure to um, acknowledge what you say and answer any questions you have. We have Kenny Groom in the background. He runs Beyond Normal Pod. Go ahead and make sure you follow Beyond Normal Pod. He interviews founders in the tech realm and really just corporate overall. And he's supporting this show today. So I'm super grateful to him. He's going to be moderating our chat area. So, yeah, and just so everyone is aware as well, this is a recorded session. So if you're on Clubhouse and you have questions, you're going to need to state your name and then let me know that you give permission for us to record your voice. And then we will move forward with listening to your question or your comment. So now that we've kind of covered the housekeeping and the ground rules, I am so pleased to introduce Anthony to the show today because we're going to be talking about something that I think today people are talking about it more. But I think traditionally it has not been discussed as heavily as we may have needed it to on a human level. And we're talking about empathy. And so just to set a groundwork, empathy is described as the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. And one other source went so far as to say it's the process of understanding what other people are going through and then feeling that and then doing something about it. And we're going to kind of talk more about the different levels of empathy. But first, I just want to ask you, Anthony, why is empathy so important?
I believe that it is in high demand and in short supply. Um, we live in a world that is full of data. You know, we're a data obsessed world, in a place where information and reason and knowledge like takes the forefront, and those things are important. Like, it's important to have reason. It's important to think logically. It's important to have information, and it is only a part of what makes us human, right? The part of us being human is also being emotional beings, being able to feel, being able to not have to experience someone's pain to know that they're going through pain, being
And
able
maybe
to
even being connected?
correct. Yeah. You know, we are social beings by nature. So empathy is so important because we are especially in this time, we need to understand that there's so much more that connects us than separates us, and we need to always lean into that space. Like, why am I similar to this person? What makes me, relate to this person? And it's not an argument that you can make rationally or logically. Sometimes it's just understanding. Person wants safety, they need security, they need connection, and they need affirmation, they need food, water, clothing. um, all of those things are super important and super necessary for us to just find peace. Ultimately, and that's what it ultimately comes down to, right? Empathy is leading us to a path of peace within our lives, within ourselves, within our family, our community, and the world at large.
I love that. You told me you can't understand someone if you don't listen to them.
Mhm.
So, my question to you is how did you come to this understanding that it was so important to understand others?
There was I think a lot of it was me growing up and in my maturity and in my willingness to let go of my ego in the negative sense of ego, like in the sense of my self-importance.
What brought
Um,
you to even understand that that was an issue for you?
I would say relationships, like my relationship, my girlfriends in my 20s, and not really feeling connected, not really finding um, the type of connections I wanted in personal relationships. My I was blessed with a very loving family, so I didn't have to struggle with the connection for them. I have good friends, and but what I found is like when it came to relationships, like more personal, intimate relationships, I was more guarded and more in a role of trying to control, not not trying to understand, and then it would just always create tension. And then, um, in addition to that, like it was never like a singular moment that I would say, oh, this is the time where I started to be more empathetic because of my background, because I grew up living in a bunch of different countries, a bunch of different states, different cultures, different people, different tastes. I always just had this awareness that we are so much more alike than we are different. Um, we all have our little quirks, but man, we're all alike. But what really elevated it for me was like, oh, but when I'm really intimate with somebody, like when I really want to go deep with someone, you just have to listen. Like you have to be aware what they're telling you, what they're communicating to you. It's not always in the ears. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's what they do and what they don't do. Sometimes it's their body language. But the listening is a part of that. And that's where it kind of started for me to really up my game.
So just to like share with the audience a little bit of information about you, you were a son of a army man, so you
Correct.
traveled a lot and
Yeah.
you spent quite a bit of time in other countries and with obviously people from other countries. Would you find like first of all, would you say that traveling so much as a youth developed your understanding of empathy, like in a strong way? And then would you find that other cultures value empathy more?
It the traveling definitely impacted it. It definitely elevated it on its own right. I don't think you can fully understand like the human experience until you really see it in different context. Um, and it doesn't always have to be travel. I think travel is the most effective way. But in reading books and reading news that is outside of your normal circle, I think those things really just open your eyes to man, these experiences are universal. These experiences being pleasure and pain in all of its different forms. So the traveling definitely helped groom me in that direction. Um, and so then the part about I'm sorry, repeat the second part of the question for me. You were
Yeah,
saying,
no worries. Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned that the traveling helped you. So my second question was, do you find that other cultures value empathy more? So in your experience
mhm.
being in these other places, would you say that you found that the people around you not only valued it, but then also in turn like encouraged you to value it more?
it I'm pausing, like, thinking about the word "value it." I'm not sure if it's a value of the empathy more or just a it's a separation in culture, like, being in Italy where people are more or you have generations of families living together, where people are just closer together, they eat to families are just together, like, it's bred in the culture to be connected, and so it's valued, yeah, it's important, and it's also just there, like, it's not even a thought because you're so ingrained in, "Yeah, let's connect, let's be together, let's" hash out our issues. Let's talk it through. American culture is, unfortunately, it is, it just emphasizes individuality,
Yeah,
to a point of
competition
fault, right?
over cooperation.
Exactly, like competition, individuality, self-made. Even though that phrase is thrown around a lot, it's just so untrue, right?
Right,
Like
it's so inaccurate.
it's,
Yeah.
it's just if you really just look at it on the very surface, right? Like we are made, like as humans, by two people coming together. That's how babies are made, right? So, and if you
Yep.
don't
So you can't
exist,
be self-made.
right, at the very instance of your aliveness, if you want to use, if I want to make up a word, like the fact that as a person exists in the world, requires two people coming together. So it is impossible to be self-made, like because you can't make anything if you were never on Earth. So but we, but you hear it all the time, right? You hear it all the time
Right.
in business and in art and entertainment. And so that language just lets you know there's a disconnect here in America. Like, yo, we're not really feeling each other. We're feeling ourselves, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
and that kinda goes back to what you were saying about empathy, just really being about connection with one another.
yeah.
I have a question for you. Do you find that it's more challenging for men to develop empathy than women? And if so, why?
There are just a number of media and cultural influences for men that tells them to squash their emotions, squash their feelings. And my my belief is that you can't understand something that you have not you can't understand something in someone else that you have not experienced and understood in yourself, right? So if I am a man who is constantly, pushing down my sadness, ignoring my embarrassment, transferring doing all these things that, neglect to identify and associate with and regulate the emotions, I can't possibly, you know understand, through a thorough degree what someone else is feeling if I've never really fully experienced it myself. So I think that it makes it a little more difficult, and I also believe that with the growth mindset, you can at any age, right? It doesn't matter what your upbringing was or what you were taught. You can learn something different. You can condition yourself to be in a different place mentally. So
So
there's
speaking
Yeah, go
oh, I'm
ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so there's an obstacle for men, based on just kind of the culture that we come up
Mhm.
in, but it's one that can certainly be over, like you can certainly overcome.
Yeah, so, I mean, yeah, just speaking of the fact that it's something that can be learned and it can be changed in your life. Do you see a trend of increased empathy among men these days, in this generation versus past generations?
I do. Just the idea of talking about toxic masculinity, or the idea of just talking about, emotional intelligence. You're seeing articles in Inc. magazine and Forbes, Fortune, just talking about emotional intelligence at work and in business. Um, People are starting to have more conversations about, the roles and of work in the home, and there's just it's certainly a lot of progress that needs to be made, but the conversation is starting, right? So I think this is a good place to start, is that, yeah, there needs to be a move towards something different than what we've done in the past. There needs to be a
Absolutely.
Yeah, there needs to be a move towards, and we know why, because like if we're not understanding others, if we're not cognitively aware that somebody else can be experiencing something different than what we may be experiencing, and be able to emotionally feel it, um, then what we end up with is a world where people are in constant conflict, constant fighting. So And not only that, but there's also a constant, I would like to use the word robbing, right? Like we're robbing
Mm,
nature, we're robbing the planet of its resources, we're robbing other countries to take their
wow.
resources and use ours, to use them as ours, and we don't care because they're not us, whatever
Right.
us is,
The
and
US.
yeah,
Thank you.
and so what happens? You have you have climate change, you have
Right.
international conflicts, you have wars, you have all of these things because it's a neglect to understand the other as being the self. Like we're not disconnected, we are connected. And so yeah, there's definitely a change. There's definitely a change happening. And it's definitely a lot more work to be done though.
Oh yeah. But we got, we start where we grow where we're planted. That's what they
Absolutely.
so we'll start where we are. So Andrea Glover, she said on Facebook, I definitely see a difference, especially from the men in my life. And you mentioned home, like
Hmm.
how does empathy affect your home life in particular? You have a wife,
Yeah.
and you guys seem to have a really strong, solid relationship with good communication. You know what I mean? Like, how does empathy play a part for you guys?
Man, I think that is everything. My wife is she's way more emotionally intelligent than I am, and I'm catching up though. I'm working hard to get on her level. But coming into a relationship, she has had me beat and still has me beat. And what she does for me is she helps, by understanding what I'm feeling, and in the most kind and considerate way, speaking to me about what I'm experiencing. She helps me develop my understanding of my needs and wants. Like what am I longing for, and what are my discontents? And as I grow in my empathy, I can do the same for her. What is she longing for, and what are her discontents? And what does that look like on the practical sense? Like what does that do for the home? you know, I notice I come home one day and I'm kind of in my head, and then maybe half an hour later, I notice she's a little irritated or frustrated, and I can approach her and say, "Hey, I'm sensing some irritation. Was there something I did?" And it becomes, "Yeah, I just asked that you would, wash the dishes, and after you ate, you didn't put the dishes away." Oh, that's something I can correct. Correct. That's a behavior I'm more than capable of doing in order to relieve her of attention that she had. I can apologize and move forward knowing that that's something that she values. She values having a clean kitchen. Okay, I'm in agreement with that. Let's move in that space. You know, um, she comes to me and is like, "Hey, I noticed you're a little down. Is there something we can do?" It's like, I just miss my parents. Like I haven't been able to see them this year because of COVID. And she's like, "Hey, let's just call him right now. Let's just FaceTime with him." Right? She's aware. We find a way to move to relieve the pressure or the pain, and then we can move in that direction. And that's what it looks like on the day to day when you're empathetic, when you're tuned into each other. You can actually find the behavior that will create the result that that you want in your life, which
Did
is
you?
yeah. Go
Oh
ahead.
no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, which is peace. That was it. It's just the
Yeah.
result is peace.
Oh, I'm sorry I cut that off. That is great. And I actually was just wondering before I get to this next question from Yum Diddy on YouTube, I wanted to ask you, like, did you experience seeing empathy in your home growing
Yeah, I did. I will forever praise my parents for being amazing models. Um, that is the great fortune I've had in my life, is having two amazing parents who just celebrated 40 years of marriage in January and are, still laughing and joking. I just called them like maybe 10 minutes before the show started. Their power's been out. There's an ice
up?
storm in Virginia. Their
Oh,
power was out. And it's been out for like 4 or 5 hours, and they're just sitting in front of the fireplace, just joking and laughing and having a good time. And you
yes.
know, they modeled it for me. I had to learn it on my own, like when I grew up and what it looked like for me. But I had a much greater head start because it was modeled in my house. And
Do you think empathy
yeah,
helps
it was
with
great.
understanding, um, not understanding, but like
So
with the friendship
I
aspect of
think
do
no,
you,
no,
oh,
go
I'm
ahead.
so sorry. Do you think that do you think that empathy that you saw in your house helped your parents kind of develop that closer relationship together where like now, they're okay with just being together and being around each other?
It does create a togetherness. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yum Diddy on YouTube, he said, "Do you think that the idea of gender roles should be gone if we're moving towards a more even distribution of responsibilities in relationships?" That's a good question.
It is a good question. And I think the I my wife and I say this all the time. It's what two people agree to. Ultimately, that's what makes a relationship. What do two people agree to? And so the idea of gender roles um uh isn't, I'm always I'm always wishy-washy about like gender roles because I think what it implies is that there is a difference and people should lean into their differences, which I do agree with. I do believe that we have different strengths and weaknesses, but I don't think it's necessarily tied to gender um, in all areas. And so, what needs to happen is we need to understand what we agree with, what we agree are our strengths and weaknesses, so that the idea of gender roles should really be talent roles or team roles. I guess would be a more visible like a more visible term. So if I'm imagining a basketball team, right? We have the center, we have the point guard, we have the shooting guard, the forward. They all are on the same team for the same objective, but they have different roles. And that's really what if we want to move towards even if we want to move towards like a more healthy, responsible relationship, we have to identify what roles we're going to play in that relationship. Gender doesn't define that. It's talents that define it. It's likes and dislikes, you know. Um, and
Yeah,
that's what we really have to just lean into. It's like we're on the same team. We're trying to get to the same destination, which is long-term marriage, which is buying a house, which is putting the kids through college, whatever it is. Who's good at finances? You know what? I'm good at math, so I'll take on the monthly bills every month. You know what? You like to clean, like you like to sweep. You'll sweep, but you know what? I enjoy cooking, and so I'll do the cooking. Neither of us enjoy washing the cars. We agree to set aside money each month to go take our cars to the car wash, right? Like,
that part. Yeah, do what makes
it's
it work.
do
Do
what
what makes
makes
it
it
work.
work. I
Yum Diddy said, "I like the idea of team roles. That's a smart take." So yeah.
Yeah, like I it's funny because I don't do cars. I don't. And I told my wife do that when she was my girlfriend. Like, you know what I do though? I go to work and I set aside money each month so that I can get my car maintained. Like I can get my oil changed.
Right.
My closest friend, he loves like he literally built an engine. He'll change the oil for his wife and for himself, right? Like that's the role he plays. His wife is in like studied business, so she does like the financial stuff. In our household, I studied like I work in construction management, so I deal with budgets and stuff, so I do the money stuff. It doesn't matter. Like it doesn't
Yeah,
matter who is doing it. Like we're on the same team. Like that's the only idea. And
that's
yes, there may be some things that, I'm my wife is shorter by gender because she's a female and I'm taller, so I might reach and get something off the top of the shelf. Is that a gender role? In the most literal sense, yes. And I'm being, facetious, but it doesn't matter. Ultimately, it's about the team role. Like whatever it is, it's about being on the same team and
that's
and
awesome.
and assigning the roles accordingly on what people are good
Yeah.
at or not.
Andrea said, "I love the way you said that. It's about identifying the strengths and likes. that keeps everybody happy and keeps resentment at bay.
Right.
Yeah,
And how it, ties into just the empathy part, right? Is that I understand that I know what it feels like to not like doing something. So I don't want my wife to experience that, right? So I know what it feels like to be good at something and to do it and do it well, and the satisfaction of doing a job well done. And so I want to feel that, and I want her to feel that as well. Like, this is something where she shines. I want her to feel that. Um and then it expands, it expands to your whatever community you're a part of. If you're at work, it's like, yeah, I want to take on this role. If I have to, if I'm good at presenting, I want to take on the presentation. I'll speak up. Hey, boss, yeah, I'll do this presentation. I like it. It's what I'm good at. If you're managing people, understanding their likes and their dislikes, their strengths and their weaknesses, like it expands. I always start in the home. I always start with the self and then the person closest to you. But then it's a mindset that continues to grow and elevate as you think about it more.
that's so powerful. I appreciate that take, and I want to welcome our first Clubhouse speaker today, Anna. You came in a little after we talked about the rules and formats. So this is a recorded session, and we're streaming live on YouTube and on Facebook. So I just want to get your permission to record your voice, and then please have at it at giving your comment or question to Anthony. Thank you. You do have my permission. I have a question. How do you deal with a person who does not immediately have empathy as a natural part of their disposition? I've been in relationships with people where it's very easy to divide roles, and if I pay 50, the guy pays 100. I've been in other relationships where getting him to contribute at all is like pulling teeth. And naturally, I gravitate, of course, to the more balanced relationships, because you always run into different situations where one person doesn't know how to give equally. What do you recommend?
My thought on that is my initial thought is we model behavior. It's the golden rule, like treat people or do unto others as you want to be done to you, right? So it all starts with being the person that you want others to be, like modeling the behavior. Um, my second thought on that is learning the language of needs, learning how to communicate what you need moment to moment, and learning how to receive what the person gives you in response. So I'll dig into that a little bit deeper. So I believe we all have the same needs all over the world. Humans have the same needs, right? Connection, safety, meaning, or understanding, play, like these basic. I need food, water, shelter needs, and connection needs. And so when you learn to communicate your needs to people, people resonate with that more than like, I want this or I want that, right? So let's say you use the example of like splitting a meal, right? I want you to split the meal. It comes off differently when you say, I really value or I have a strong need for equality or for fairness. So if you can help by splitting the meal, that means a lot to me. It resonates different. Um, Said a different way, let's say it's something like the person doesn't want to take on the role. Like they say, that's women's work. You shouldn't, I shouldn't be cooking or cleaning the house. Coming at it like, I feel disappointed, or I'm irritated when I have to work and then I have to come home and clean. And I want, I, my ask is that you would help me with the house cleaning a little bit. So learning that language of like, what am I feeling in this moment and what do I need? Learning to be comfortable with communicating that's an important first step to connecting with somebody who doesn't naturally have empathy, because even if they don't reflect the emotion, they understand the need. Everyone has the needs, and two things will happen when you start to communicate in that way. Number one, your partner will respond to it and they'll say, oh, I wasn't aware that you needed that, or that you valued that so highly, or that it made you feel this way. And If they do, they will, you know, start to hopefully act accordingly. Now, people are people. They may not automatically change their behavior, but most people will be willing to change their behavior. The other way they'll respond is through they'll just reject it, they'll dismiss it, they'll ignore it, or they might just outright, attack it. That also communicates something to you as well. If you communicate your needs to someone and it's met with dismissal or aggravation, and that tells you that this quite possibly might not be the person I want to, dedicate a lot of time with. It's tricky when it's family or in this marriage and there's like a lot of ties, but either way, it informs you. Either way, you're informed. As we communicate our needs better, we gain information from the person that we're communicating them to.
A quick question related to that, Anthony. Uh, can someone be too empathetic?
Can someone be too empathetic? So if we strip out if we like bare bones, what is empathy? Like an understanding and an awareness of what somebody else is feeling. I don't think you can be like you can overly understand or have too much awareness.
Well,
Um,
let me explain.
yeah.
So I was doing a bit of research on empathy, and
Hmm.
someone broke it down to three types of empathy, but I also saw them as almost working together as like a process.
Yeah.
But they broke down cognitive empathy, which is like knowing how the other person feels and what they might be thinking, and then emotional empathy is feeling physically along with the other person as though their emotions were contagious.
Right.
And then the third one was compassionate empathy, which is understanding the predicament and the feelings with the person and then being moved to help if needed. So I guess when I say like, can someone be too empathetic, I think about those people who may see something happening, may have a friend talking to them about what's happening,
And they
and then
start
they take
crying
it
with them.
on
Yeah.
almost,
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to cry, but if you take it on and it starts affecting your decision making for your life and things like that, I almost feel like that's too much empathy, but I don't know if I'm misplacing that word in that sense. What do
Yeah,
you say?
that's a good point, and I don't know if we have another word. There may be another word that can really accurately, differentiate those two things. Um, most of the stuff I'm talking about is kind of on the cognitive empathetic level,
I see.
where we're talking about feelings. There are feelings, but we're talking about them. So in order to talk about them, we got to process them mentally and communicate them. So we have to know what's going on in our bodies, experience it, translate it into words, and then communicate it. Or, if it's not inside of ourselves, we have to know what's going on in somebody else's body, translate it into a feeling, and then communicate it. Like, oh, I sense that you're happy in this moment. I see that you're relaxed. I see that you're irritated. So that's cognitive, right? Um, there are people and we all experience this, right? Like if you're in a crowd at a game, you're in and everyone's hype and excited. You feel that energy, you feel that. Um and so it's a good question. I don't know if I have an answer to it. Could that be too much where, if you're in a position where you're talking to people and you take on whatever emotion they're giving you and it starts to affect your behavior and your mood, can there be too much of that? I think it can be for sure. And then my immediate thought after that is, there always have to be a level of self care and self awareness. Um, if you think of yourself as something that as someone that needs to be considered, then you also have to take care of yourself, right? Like in a weird way, you have to have empathy for self. You have to
Absolutely.
understand. It sounds weird because we usually think about the other when we say empathy, but you have to have an understanding and awareness of what you feel and what affects you. So yeah, I
Yes.
think I think there can be an unhealthy way to take on other people's feelings. I do agree with that. Yeah.
I love what you said about it just being about self care and self awareness as well. You know, we're here just to kind of refresh the room. We're here discussing loving you, and the whole idea behind this series is to build our toolbox, to build um, self love and tools that can help us to just maintain that self love. And so you brought out a super great point there. Anna, thank you so much for coming up on stage. Did you have another question for Anthony, or did he take care of your question?
Well, it seems like he answered the one part, but the other part is your needs are still not being met.
Yeah.
So what is the approach?
Uh, I'm gonna take. I'm. I am such a hardliner on this. And I guess for some context, Anna, is this like a dating relationship or like a family? Hmm. Okay. Right. Hmm. What? Well, my initial thought to that is it has to happen earlier. There has to be it's boundaries. My initial thought to that is boundaries. If needs aren't being met um, consistently over time, then Anna, I would say speak up your needs a little sooner and hold people to it. Right? You know, if you're at a job and you tell your manager, "Hey, I need more time to complete these tasks," and they don't give you that time, you know, one time, two times, three times, and it's like you go back and say, "Can we have a conversation about me not having the time to complete these tasks, or me not getting the recognition for these tasks that I've completed?" And if they say they don't want to, then you find another job. You start looking, right? Like, don't. There's no obligation to stay in a place where where your needs aren't being met, not your wants, your needs, right? So that's also very clear. Like, we're talking about the very basic things like respect. Yeah, you should absolutely start looking for it. Like I said, I'm a hardliner on this because I just desire peace in my life above everything else. I'm not going to stay where I'm not going to be treated well at work. I'm not. I'm just not going to do it. I understand it takes time to find a new job and I can tolerate stuff, but I'll set my boundaries early. If they cross those lines, I start looking for somewhere else to go. Same thing with family. You set a hard line. You say, "Hey, I'll let you stay here for whatever you're comfortable with, 30 days, 60 days. This is what I'll give you. I'll give you 60 days to stay here. Here's what I require as far as maintenance for my property. Could you know, do these things for me? Make sure you don't do these things." Um, and then if they violate any of those within that time period, then you say, "I'm sorry, you have to go. You haven't been able to, fulfill the thing I want." It's taking a hard line on boundaries. It's taking a hard line on, communicating your needs up front and then enforcing it. Like, this is what I asked of you. You have not done it. There's grace in that, however much grace you want to give it, but it seems, what I'm hearing though is that you've extended beyond your grace period, what you are able to tolerate, what you feel comfortable with. Again, that goes back to the self-care. Once you've established what you need and you've communicated it very early on, do not make allowances for people to walk beyond those boundaries that you set. You take that responsibility, Anna, and you say, "No, I'm not going to allow people to step over the boundaries I have set. I must guard my heart." Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
I was just thinking connected to that too, especially um, in the way of work. Sometimes it's so important. Well, I was told that if I didn't write it down, it never happened. And
Hmm.
so I think keeping a record of things that occur, if, they say, oh, you're going to get a promotion or you're going to get this bonus, make sure you get that kind of stuff in writing when things happen, write it down, because not only does it help you when you need to kind of like talk to them about the fact that you're feeling some type of way, and you need evidence of it. But it also is like a reminder to you of what you've kind of been putting up with, so that when you do make that move, like like Anthony is saying, he's very strict about that if he's not getting what he wants. So he's going to move on. Like when you do make that move, sometimes it's like we can be gung ho about it. And then when it's time to do it, we back out. But if
Hmm.
we have that list of things that reminds us why we're leaving, then it's such a great reminder to just keep on moving because you deserve better.
Right.
So, thank you so much, Anna. I'm going to move you back to the audience. We have one comment from Andrea Glover on Facebook, another one. I think that it is probably a lack of boundaries. I can feel for your situation and know that it's not my place to try and save you. Some people struggle with that. So I think that was to Anna. Andrea was really connecting with what you said. And if you have a comment back, feel free to raise your hand again. But just to kind of like keep things going, we're just talking about relationships. So you and your wife, Ashley, um, you guys have figured out your flow and you guys are doing your thing, and you guys have a show
Yeah.
that you do together. Can just tell us a little bit about that, and then kind of explain where the empathy comes in to play as you guys have been navigating this whole, basically like working together almost.
Yeah, I would say we haven't figured it out. We're figuring it out day in and day out because every day's a new. It really is a dance where, each beat, each transition, each day creates a new movement, and you just got to be in it. So we haven't figured it out. We're just flowing in it, and I think we're in a good place, and being in that good place is why we came together and we did this podcast. It's called A on Life. So my wife's name is Ashley. Anthony. We're A, and it's on life. It's on doing life together. It's on expectations that we brought into the marriage. It's on money. It's on housework. Um, it's on how to disagree without arguing. So we touch on a lot of those topics, and we found this space just as it's funny, like even doing this is a compromise. It's a exercise in empathy. I enjoy podcasts. I love them. I love the audio space. I wanted to do something with it. My wife, recognizing the joy it brought me, was willing to participate. Me recognizing that one of her core values is quality time. That's one of her love languages. I formatted it in a way that we get to spend quality time together. We sit down on the couch, we put the mics in front of each other. We talk about things that matter to the both of us. Like I didn't, just force her to talk about something that she doesn't care about. It was like, hey, these are things that are important to us. Let's have the conversation. Her need for quality time is being met. My need to venture into something that I enjoy is being met. And the team wins. The team wins. So that's how we flow in that space. I'm super proud of it because we're having some great conversations. We're sharing some great tools. She is amazingly wise. She is an amazingly beautiful and wise woman, and her insights into marriage and life and love are incredible. I listen as I'm editing, I'm listening back to it like, man, I'm just here for for show. Like and I'm biased. I love her to death. So yeah, so that's the podcast, A on Life. It's great. It,
Thank you for
it's
sharing
it's a
that.
great thing to do with her. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned that you guys are working at it. And I mean, I'm a single lady, so I can't speak for marriages or anything, but it seems like it's a constant work. You're maybe always gonna do it because, you guys are going through life together, and that's never simple, just even as a one person. So I can't
It's
even
so
imagine
true.
navigating with two.
I saw
So
a post on
mhm.
Instagram, and it made me laugh so much. And it's so true. It said, being married is dealing with problems together, problems that you wouldn't have had if you were single. And And it's so true. I
Yeah.
love that. It's like, yeah, as much as marriage is being rewarding and having someone to deal with problems with, it creates its own problems in the
Yes.
connection. And so it's wherever we are in life, wherever we are, just got to work at it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You told me one thing. You said sympathy without action, or I'm sorry, empathy without action is sympathy.
Mm, yeah.
Um, and it made me, when you said that, it made me think of like, to kind of get more on a national level. There's so much going on in the news just today, right, with Trump and everything.
Hmm.
Um, do you think that we can have an America with empathy and be the same? Like, if empathy was kind of built into the way that things are done here, would America look different? And how so?
America would look absolutely different. Empathy was not the founding principle on America, on the very basis of what the American government was doing to enslave people, to Native people, to women. Um, the actual laws themselves were not meeting the needs of others. The laws were written in a discriminatory way. So what we see of America, the roots that were planted, we're seeing the fruit of that. So I absolutely believe that we can plant a new tree. We can create a new future, and it would look completely different than what we have now. Yeah, there is without doubt a lack of there's just a lack of care for other people, for people that especially here in America. Like, there's just a lack of care for people who we don't either understand or we don't agree with. And in that headspace, like, if I just don't care about this person, if I don't move towards them, that just it's just we're all being robbed of the potential that we all have to do more. Not
Mm,
only that, and so that's one part of it. So we can put that on one side of the table. On the other side of the table, there's just vitriol. There's legitimate hate towards
yeah,
the other in this country. There's little hate, right? Like, we know about the Tuskegee experiments, where
right,
they hated black men and they treated them like lab rats. We know
right.
about the Trail of Tears, where they hated the natives and they forced them to march across the country in pain
Hmm.
and rob them of their land. We know about the hate for the Japanese in World War II. We know about the hate for the Asians that are being persecuted now, where we see an increase in assaults and violence towards Asian Americans after the coronavirus came, right? So
Mm,
we know
yes,
that hate exists also in this country, in addition to a lack of care. So we have a long, 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 long way to go to even begin to see this country as a country that's founded on empathy. And we have to just all be taking steps to get there. And it starts with each of us,
yes,
you know?
yes. That's exactly what I was thinking. As soon as you said that, I was like, man, all we can do is take um single steps ourselves,
Right.
and then it affects those around us. So look, speaking of that though, what are the you shared this with me, and I
Hmm.
really want everyone who's listening in to hear this. What are the three top ways to position yourself to be empathetic? You said that there's like three things that are pretty much needed. And I don't know if you remember what you said, but it was so good to me. And if
I
you
was
need
gonna say,
support,
oh man, this is a quiz. Number one was listening. Um, you're gonna have to chime in on me on some of these just series. So number one was listening, just being able to really take in what the other person is saying, communicating. And so listening isn't just um, with your ears; it's with your eyes, it's with your feelings. Like, so, take in the information that people are giving and believe it. That's the other important part. Like, if somebody's sharing something, believe it, positive or negative. Believe what they told you. Um, Number
I'm gonna
two. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, I'm gonna just read these quotes that you gave to me because they were so good. And I know you were just You were flowing.
I
So I'm
was.
glad I wrote these down.
I was.
You said the first thing is to seek to understand more than to be understood. And I thought that was fantastic because I know even myself, I can be in my head when I'm in these interviews and I'm just thinking about what I'm going to say next. And I have to slow down because you, as my guest, or whoever is my guest, is talking, right? And it's
Mhm.
valuable information that, may be unknown and something I didn't hear in our time, prior to this. So it's so important. That was a good one. Number two was be comfortable with being
Uncomfortable.
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Mhm. And then number three was having a servant mindset, which
There
I
it
thought
is.
was powerful. So go ahead and expound upon it as you see fit.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the reminder. It's funny. I do just get into flow states and I don't even remember. So thank you for writing them down for the both of us. So yeah, so seeking to understand more than to be understood. Listening, right? That's where I was going with that idea where we want to know, we have an eagerness to know what the other person has to say more than our desire to say what we have to say. Um, it's just super important. Like you build off of that. Um, the I want to talk about the idea of having a servant mindset. Like I'll kind of jump, but like that idea, because I talked about how empathy requires action. We have to just, if we want to elevate our empathy, we have to be willing to serve the things that move us. It's not enough to say, "Oh, I care about this thing, but I'm not going to do anything about it." You know, I care that there's people who are homeless, but I'm not going to give my energy and time towards it. I care about their, kids that don't have clothes, but I'm not going to actually do anything about it. We have to be willing to serve. The point of service is a point of sacrifice. So once something moves us, we have to be willing to give our time and energy to do something about it, to correct the problem, to solve it, right? So the seeking to understand is the first part, and then serving, is what has to come of it to be more empathetic. So I was giving an example about the home earlier, right? So I understand my wife has certain needs for, like, let's say, having the dishes rinsed. As a servant to my wife's needs, having a servant mindset, I'll do that simple task. I'll rinse the dishes. Um, some tasks may be bigger. Let's say it's like we talked about the national scene, right? And this is a big one because a lot of people think, oh, being upset is enough and tweeting about it is enough. No, if you are genuinely, bothered by a policy, write your policymaker. Or even better, do something that solves the problem that the policy isn't addressing. If you don't
Yeah.
like that, there's to like the policy isn't correcting homelessness, you get a group together, you organize, you create funds, and you build homeless shelters or you build housing for the low income. And if that
Yeah.
sounds like too much work, then do it either way. Just do
Yeah.
it.
You just got to get it done
Just
because
do it.
otherwise it won't get done.
It's not gonna get done.
Right. Right.
Um, all right. So what was the second one? Those two connected. What was the second
Yeah,
one
no,
was
that was pretty much it. Like I feel like those quotes kind of like just drove the point home. And I just think, now that time is kind of cutting close, as we wrap up, I'm just wanting you to let the audience know and the listeners know, how can they learn more about your upcoming projects? Because I know you have a lot going on. Maybe you can just
yeah,
give a rundown of what you have coming up and
absolutely.
then how people can, keep in touch with you and gain from your knowledge and content.
I'm most active on Instagram. It's at Mr. Mr. Anthony Chiles. You can my DMs are open. You can connect with me there. You can message me there. 28 Media is the production company where I host my podcast through. I have the Elevating Empathy podcast that comes out weekly, and I also have the podcast with my wife, A&A on Life. They're available on Apple, Spotify, Google. You can find them there, or you can go to 128media.com and check them out. In addition to that, work is available on Amazon. Monday Motivation is a book that I published maybe 5 years ago. You can check that out. It's a little, I call them little empowerment shots, little 1 minute essays to just kind of boost you through the day. And then other stuff, the podcast is where I'm really focused right now. That's what I'm working on the most, I'm most passionate about. But I got some other stuff burning. So follow me on IG at Mr. Anthony Chiles. Keep in touch. And yeah, I'm happy to talk to anybody about any of this. So yeah, I hope we can
Fantastic.
connect.
Okay. Well, this has been so fun. I want to give another shout out to Kenny there in the audience. He has been technical directing for me during this episode and has done a great job. I really appreciate it. And I want to shout out Miss Ruth, who just came into the room. She's an amazing public speaker who I hope to host very soon. And Miss Anna, thank you so much for your comments. It was really nice to have your question to kind of just take a different look at empathy and where some people are struggling. And a special shout out to Terrence and Sean, one of my favorite couples actually. So I'm glad you guys tuned in and were able to just listen into the good stuff that Anthony gave in. And I cannot forget about Andrea on Facebook and Yum Diddy, aka Daryl, over on YouTube. I appreciate your guys' input, and this has been so fun and insightful. So I really appreciate you, Anthony, for just bringing what you know and helping us to get to know it and make it useful in our lives.
Just Siri, I'm so happy and grateful that you gave me this opportunity. I genuinely appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. Until next time, I will see you all. Thank you. Good night.